Well, this is Old Electronics Fan, and I mentioned I wanted to build an AM transmitter. Well, I have tried several different times, and I'm sure it's because of my lack of knowledge that I have not succeeded. But I tried, well, let's say, I tried a 555 timer version of an AM transmitter, and that I got to work, but I didn't like it. The only way I could use it is if I use something like this, which has built into it an EQ, which allowed me to make up for its shortcomings. The audio quality was pretty poor. So then there's another one that used a MOSFET, and that I really don't know why that didn't work. The person who built it had no problem making it operate, so obviously there was a mistake on my part. And I spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out what I was doing wrong, and I just finally realized I simply don't have the time to invest in figuring that out. One of these days I'll get a breadboard and I'll set it up, and that will allow me to play around with things, and maybe I can get it figured out then. But I've just decided it's just not something I have the time to play with. So what I did was I bought. Whoops! I'm bumping my camera. I bought a little Chinese. Well, first of all, there were two things I wanted. I wanted it to be frequency adjustable easily, and I wanted decent quality sound. I want to give you an example of the sound that you can get out of this. I have the little amp, or no, transmitter. I want to say amp, don't know why. I have the little transmitter sitting over near my stereo. And I want to give you an idea of what this sounds like through something like that. Let me see here. Okay, I decided to boost the bass a little bit so you could hear what this little thing is putting out. So there it is. That's the little amplifier. This was a kit, and I was kind of surprised because these are the leftover parts. They sent extras of the resistors, the transistors, even this little connector here. They sent me an extra, and the diode. Oops. Okay, assembly. All right, so I did not show my assembly of this. I just didn't think that was terribly exciting. But I did want to go over some of the things that I ran into that especially people who aren't all that familiar with electronic stuff or are new to it or whatever, might find a little bit challenging. And even for somebody who knows something about it, you can run into a couple of minor things. So let's start with the transistors. If you notice, these are silk screened on with the drawing of the circuitry within the transistor, which is fine. And I suppose if you are maybe not as familiar with electronics as yet, you're learning things, being able to relate this part to this part, that might be helpful. But usually when they silk screen the components on the board, like for instance, if you look at this little capacitor, it's in the shape of the capacitor. And so usually these little D-shaped transistors would have a D-shaped silkscreen image on the board, which makes it quick and easy to orient the transistor correctly. I wound up using this, and I could have looked up the transistor and it would have showed me this, but quick and easy, I hooked it. I put the transistor in there. I figured out these numbers are from my tester, and that told me where each thing was, and I was able, and this is actually looking at it from the bottom. I probably should have done it from the top, but I think most of the time when you see these are, I think, from the bottom? I don't know. So anyway, so I did this and to give me an orientation relative to the physical shape of the transistor, and that allowed me to make sure the transistors got in there correctly. And this wasn't a hard thing to assemble, and I didn't have any trouble with it. I soldered everything on, hooked it up, and it worked perfectly. Now over here, oh, stop that. This is one of my power supplies, and what's nice about this little power supply is that usually when you hook up something to it, which I did initially, I had to go find some batteries. So I just hooked my power supply up to this and tested using that, and I noticed something. There's a voltage display and then there's a current display. And the current part usually shows you what current the device is drawing that you have attached to it. That told me that there was no current. I mean, that couldn't possibly be. This was playing and working. What that means is that the current is low enough that that thing didn't recognize that there was any current. So that means these batteries will last for a very long time, unless they just age out and leak on you, which they can do. But anyway, so if you opt not to do a 6-volt adapter, then you can play this for quite a long time, and it probably won't. The batteries will last forever. I'm trying to find my 6-volt adapter. There it is. Okay. So I want to show you, because I played with this a little bit, because one of my concerns is that these little wall warts tend to be noisy. So I wondered, well, does this and I noticed I turned it on. I'm going to show you that I am indeed working from the wall wart. The light is now off because I don't have this plugged in. Back out here a little bit. Alright, so I plug this in. It's now on. And so let's see, I'm going to use this radio right here. And I'm just going to have to move that out here somewhere. Come on, you. Warm up. Tube type radio, a little slow. Okay. Oh, I guess I should have this playing if I wanted to hear anything. All right. Okay, so that works and it's clean. Let's see if that makes any difference. I'll unplug it. Not really. Okay, so that works just fine. So if you want to run this on a little power adapter, doesn't seem to get any noisier. I'm trying to think about where I want to go from here. Alright, well I forgot to do something, so I had to get that set up so you could actually see. Just make this a little bit, well maybe I don't want to do that. I had too much junk on my table there. Alright, so I wanted to show you this. There's a lot of these little AM transmitters. I think some of them are the same, coming from different vendors. I happen to buy mine from Elsky. It cost me $26.97, so just under $27. It arrived. Oh, why did you do that? Why for did you jump? Oh, there it is. Oh, so it arrived on February 25th in the PM. I assembled this thing, and the next morning I was playing with it. Actually, I started playing with it that night, but I started filming this back the day after I got it. I was just a little anxious to want to see if it worked. Now, one of the things I noticed was the range that they gave here, and I noticed that this wasn't doing that. I was a little puzzled at first until I realized something. Now let's see here. I want to show you how it was behaving before I played with it. Alright, so let me, oh yes, here we go. Let's go out again, because I tend to forget to do things like that. Alright, when I got this, I really don't need that anymore, or that for the moment. Alright, when I got this, this was mounted and this was mounted, and that was it. The rest of it you had to put on and solder in place and all that. So what that means is that this wasn't adjusted at the factory because there wasn't, this wasn't assembled, so they didn't align it. That basically boils down to you doing that. So I was considering what to do. So I was looking at this part here where it says monitor and ground. And when I looked at the circuit diagram, let me see if I can get in there. That's this coil right here. So this end connects to the common ground, which is for the entire circuit, and this end is just hanging out there. So what that means is this coil is simply there so it can read what this coil is doing. So it took me a little bit of thought, but then I realized, hey, what if I hooked up an oscilloscope to this? Can I use that to adjust this? And I forgot to pull my oscilloscope out. So once again, I must pause. Alright, so I think I finally got everything set up. I've got my oscilloscope set up. I've got it hooked up here, and so as I was saying, I put a mark here, a line here, and here, and I put a dot here and here. These, if you turn them completely, what do I want to do? If you rotate this completely around so that this red little black dot winds up back here, you'll wind up with the same setting. So your settings range is in between here and here. So I've got a black dot to tell me where this is pointing, and I have a line drawn on both of these to make sure I don't forget where I was. So the other thing I want to show you though is right now it's around 1250. If I go all the way down, it's 497, 500. So that's not what I want. So let's see if I can tweak this a little bit and see if I can get it to go where I want it to go. Now, alright, so I'm about out halfway there, and I'm at 1493. Let's see what I can do with this part. Okay. And it's supposed to be 1605, roughly. Well, that's fine. And so now let's go down to the bottom and see where we're at. And 1525, I don't know if that'll make any difference if I tweak this. I don't know if I really want that. Well, 520, more or less. Let's see what the high end is. Oops. Oh, I guess we don't want that, do we? $16.05. No. All right, what do we got down here? Well, you know what? I think that's going to be good enough. Yeah. I could spend a lot of time playing with this, but it's not going to make much difference. 520 or 5, 15, 18 versus 525, or on the other end, whoops, is 613, thereabouts. So now it's got the range that I want. That's what I was aiming for, and interesting. All right. So anyway, you notice I didn't hook anything up to it because the transmitter is transmitting. The only thing it's not doing is sending out a modulated signal that you're going to hear on the radio, because I have no source. I have no audio flowing into this thing. But you can tweak this, and just in case you're not sure if that's true, let's see if I can plug this in, and we'll see if it makes any difference. I don't think it will. Yeah. All that does is it makes my sine wave bounce around, but it's not changing the frequency. So that's kind of what I might expect. Okay. Away. So, alright, so that's all you have to do to get this, to show you the full range. Now, like I said, you could use a frequency counter. The way my frequency counter is set up, it's a bit touchy, I guess. Or it can dance around a lot more than I would like it to. So the oscilloscope to me is the way to go, because you can just easily flip it from one end to the other and see if you've got the range that you want. If you don't have a digital scope, and you do have a frequency counter, try that. But this also raises another point. I didn't think of until later. If you wanted to, you could hook a small frequency counter module to this, and then you would have a digital display telling you what frequency you were actually on here. That might prove to be useful for some. I don't know. Okay, before we leave this, I just want to show you the circuit diagram they included with this, and you'll notice that the way their symbols are a little bit different than what I've noticed before. This is a ground or common, and depending, if you're dealing with, well, I guess anything, you could have something that's signal ground, and you could have something that's chassis ground, or you could have common ground, which is basically what this is saying, is that this is the negative side of the battery, and then you've got all these other indicators of the connection between here and that. And for those of you who are well familiar with this, you're probably yawning right now. The way they indicated that this is the positive side of the capacitor is that little rectangle is hollow, not filled in, and this, of course, this is the negative side of the capacitor. Oh, there was one other thing I wanted to show you. Let me just zip in a little bit more because I wanted to make sure you can see this. You notice this C3 says 100. Now C7 says 0.022 microfarad. And you've got a capacitor up here that's 100 microfarad. And this is electrolytic. This, if you look down here, this is it says 100 right here. This is C3 right here. And you notice the shape of the silkscreen says that's supposed to be a disc capacitor. But I saw that 100 and I said, oh, why? What, I expected to see, 100 PF or something to indicate what it was. And my first thought was, oh, this should be one of those. But I only have one of those. Probably a good thing I only had one of those. So I stuck this, and on the side of this, there was a ceramic capacitor, and it had a 101. So I checked it out, and that's a 100 picofarad. So I measured it using my little tester, and it said, yep, you're 100 picofarad. I said, oh, that kind of makes sense. So this had me confused for a little bit, and I had to go through take some steps to try to figure out what the heck was going on with that. Because my first thought was they silkscreened this wrong, and they sent me the wrong component, or I was kind of baffled for a few minutes. And so if you're working with something like this, pay attention to the silkscreening and look for the component that is the right size for what they're calling out there. Obviously I got it right because this thing works. So those are some of the little quirks that you run into with some of these schematics, which don't match what I'm used to. So anyway, so the next question is, how well does this work? Well, you've heard it play. The sound quality is very good. Range, well, I have a little portable radio here. And so I fired this up. And by the way, the orientation does make a difference. So I oriented this so that I could walk away from my desk with this radio and see how far it would reach. And probably the maximum reach is about 6 feet. Which for how I want to use it is fine. I'm sure there are transmitters, well, there are transmitters that'll transmit a lot further than just 6 feet. Obviously, you are restricted by your local laws regarding how far you can transmit. And the fact that this reaches 6 feet, it's more than good enough. I can set it down somewhere near the radio and have the radio respond to it cleanly, and that's fine. That works for me. So the next question is, well, what would you use this for? Most of you probably already know how you'd use this, but I'm going to mention how I'm going to use it. Number one is, I live in an area where radio reception is, well, somewhat sketchy, shall we say. So it's nice to have an independent content source that I can use when trying to hear how our radio is actually performing. I want, how good is the audio? Is it receiving across the band? There's things like that I can test with this. The other thing is, we have one local station that can give me a clean signal. Unfortunately, their content isn't always what I want to listen to. Not surprising, I guess. Everybody has their own desires or own preferences. So what this will do is, if I want to life test a radio, I can hook up an MP3 player. I can hook up, I have a portable CD player. I could hook this to hook a line out from my stereo, and I could play albums if I wanted to through this. It gives me the ability to provide audio for life testing my radios that I can just hang out and listen to, because I like to read, so I might just fire up one of the old radios that I want to test, put some music on, and let that thing play while I listen and read, or just hang out doing other things, whatever. So that's another thing that I would use this for. One of the things I might try to do is mark this dial with frequencies, because that's the other thing is, well, and I've got my signal generator and I can use that for this, but for just a quick test to see is the dial lining up with the frequency, I could use this as a quick check to see if it's doing okay. And I'm sure there's probably other uses that I'm not thinking of right now, but those are the things I think of when I go to use this. It would be nice just to be able to play it through some of my AM radios that don't have necessarily all that great reception. And so unfortunately, when they're tuned as best I can tune them, they still don't have the best reception. They're old. They don't have an antenna, and so some of the old radios you have to have a long wire antenna, which I finally did run one, so that will help a little bit. But again, one of the things you might run into is the reception in this area varies depending on the season, and so there are times when even if the station that you can get is playing something you want to hear, it may be noisy, it may be weak. So having something like this that allows me to play my music or whatever I want to through that radio, that's something that that was one of the things that made me want an AM transmitter, and so now I have one, and I'm extremely happy with this. I like the fact that they gave me spare components, although I have most of the components they sent. I have spares of those. Actually, I think I have all of them, except maybe I have diodes too, so. But it was nice of them to include spares in the kit, which I thought that was great that they did that. It was nice. If you drop a resistor on the floor and you can't find it, if you've got a spare and you can keep on going forward. It won't be the first time that's happened to me. So anyway, so my goal in presenting this was, okay, if you buy a kit, should you? Is it a big pain in the neck to put together? And the answer to that is no. Especially if you remember a few key things, and you have a way. Now, if you don't have a way of testing a transistor to find out what it is, they give you the number on the transistor could be looked up, and you could find out what the pins are. And the reason that's important is you might know that the center pin is the base typically, but you might not know which is the emitter and the collector, because it varies depending on the transistor. For some reason they didn't standardize on that. So on one transistor this might be the collector and this might be the emitter, and you need to know that in order to get this thing to function. So but other than that, making sure that you've got your electrolytics connected properly with your ground going, the negative lead going to the white screened section of the image for the capacitor on the board will go a long way towards making it work. Now, as far as adjusting this, Many people don't have a digital oscilloscope. They've never seen a need for it. And there is a way to take an analog scope, figure out what frequency you are looking at. I've never taken the time to learn how to do that. So if you know how to use your analog scope to read the frequency, then you could use that. Or you could use, like I said, a frequency counter. That works. Or the last thing that you could try would be just to use a radio that you know is properly aligned. And you could adjust the range if you wanted to that way. So there, I don't think there are any limitations on for anybody who wants to go ahead and do this. This really is not that hard. It doesn't have that many components, and that kind of amazes me that with these few components that it performs the way it does. Whoever designed this knew what they were doing, and it came out good. So doing this video, I wanted to answer a few questions that others might have. Should I buy the kit? As far as I'm concerned, sure. If you don't want to bother building it, buy one that's not a kit. Should I even buy the AM transmitter? My answer is yes. If you don't mind spending almost $30 on one, I think it was well worth doing. What this will allow me to do is to pull away from trying to figure out or find, because there's a bunch of AM transmitter circuits on the internet. I went looking, and some of them you'd have to go hunting for the components that may or may not be available, and it just seemed like I was going to invest a whole lot more time on that than I really wanted to. So I'm glad I went this route, because now I've got something I can use. It didn't take me that long to assemble this, and like I said, it works the way I want it to. So yes, if you don't want to be bothered, some of you, and I was kind of in that court where I want to build my own. If you're still in that place where you want to build your own, go for it. And I'm still frustrated that one that I tried to build just didn't work. I made sure that the MOSFET was working properly. I tried a bunch of different things, and it just simply wouldn't work. I verified that the coil was hooked up correctly. I don't know what I did wrong, but it just simply would not behave. One of these days I might go back and tackle that, but in the meantime, I don't have to, because I've got something I can use, and I will use in the future. So, the question, should you buy one? Sure. If you have a use for it, I would definitely say go ahead and do it. Let's see, what else was I going to answer? Well, for me, it had the things that I wanted. It had a way to control the output. It had a way to control the frequency, and actually it covered the entire AM band, which I like, because there are times, especially if at night, there are frequently a lot of stations that some of my better radios will pick up, and I'd like to find a quieter spot on the spectrum to play this through, and being able to cover the entire range is helpful. Let me see, what else was I going to talk about? I don't know. So let me just finish up with, let's see, I want to turn this on and see what I got on here. So I might just wrap up with some audio from this. Let's see, turn it on, turn this on, and let's see, let's bring forward, I want to pick where are you? Come on. No. There it is. Now you can see that this is sensitive to orientation, which is not unusual with AM. So anyway. So there it is, playing, and I couldn't be more pleased. So my mind is going blank. Okay, so my bottom line is I hope this is interesting. I hope this is helpful. If you were wondering if this is something you should bother with, the answer is yes. Kit, not kit, that's up to you. It's a pretty nice little design. You've got the ability to adjust the range, which is kind of handy, especially since it comes not adjusted for the full range. But so what? You just tweak it. And it's got everything I want. And some of the designs, the other AM transmitter designs I was looking at, didn't have a lot of the things that this does. So maybe in the end, this was a better choice because it gives me everything I want. That won't stop me from probably playing around with stuff in the future once I have more time to play with it. But for now, this is it for me. This is good. It works. I like it. I think other people will like it too. I'm not being paid to say that. I bought this. It was not given to me. Oh, I like the name on here, Designer, Radio Lover, and it has a date 9/26/2021. So this is a fairly new design. Hi-Fi AM. I have to say, yeah, it's a mini watt transmitter. So anyway, I'm going to bail out at this point because I have a tendency to yammer along too much. I don't know if I will ever cure myself of that, but I'm hoping that you found this useful or interesting, and I hope that you will join me in the future for some of my future videos. Some of the parts I've ordered for some of my future projects have arrived. I may actually be able to start one of the projects, and soon I'll hopefully have a video on that. But in the meantime, till then, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you back again.